Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session of LitFestX. We're joined by debutante author Sakshi Salve, who wears actually many different hats. She is a novelist, of course, and she is an amateur photographer, a voracious reader, and a chef at large, and uh, the last one being an entertainer, as she calls herself. Sakshi has, studied abroad, worked in UK in the financial services sector before she found her calling. Entertaining family and friends at weddings, and sort of taking charge of things just to help people out. And she found a lot of wonderful insights into the way we marry and how that entire journey, how that entire process takes place. This is her first book, The Big Indian Wedding. Sakshi, welcome to LitFestX.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Um, Sakshi, so on the subject, does media decide our weddings? I mean, clearly, one can say that there was this era before Yash Raj films portrayed Indian weddings in a particular fashion, which was grand and, with lots of drama, lots of color, lots of spending, everything happening. And that maybe changed the way we saw our weddings. But you have been seeing this more closely, following it more closely, and certainly something that you've written at great length in your book. So, on and all, do you see media really deciding our weddings?
Definitely. I think, I mean, maybe decide is a very strong word, but they definitely have a huge impact and influence on the way we, celebrate and I think live our lives in general. And of course, weddings are a huge part of our life. And I think media being, I have three categories actually. One is movies, huge influence, right? The way we not just perceive weddings, I think the way love is perceived these days, and then what you need to do when you're in love, and then of course marriage is the sort of ultimate, goal. And I think movies, songs, social media. These are my three major categories of how we get so influenced, and then how the way we celebrate and the way we party and the way we express our love really gets molded by these three big influences.
So, interestingly mentioned movies. Now, clearly, every sort of wedding season, if you will, throughout the year, one can almost guess when going to a friend or a relative sangeet as to what songs will be playing, right?
You have those three top songs of the season, mostly centered around alcohol. Last year, 2 years ago, it was Auntie Police Bula Legi, and we had our lungi dance, and char baj gaye, lekin party abhi baki hai. And actually, you don't really sit and think about this, right? You're just like, okay, new song, it's doing well, it's catchy, let's hear it, and then the more you hear it at weddings, the more it grows on you. Suddenly, the next thing you know, it's a super hit song. What this does subconsciously to us, and it takes a while to sort of catch up, so we don't realize instantly, is that slowly this is changing us as a society. Now, if there weren't any songs that promoted partying till 4 in the morning or that promoted vodka and champagne like Sir Honey Singh does these days, I think things would have been very different. Like now, it's almost like people might be tired and drunk and wanting to go home, but they will want to party beyond 4. Why? So that they can play the song Char Baj Gaye Lekin Party Abhi Baki Hai. You know what I mean? There was always some fear of crossing a line, I think like a decade ago or even a couple of years ago, that, if neighbors complain, police na aa jaye. After Auntie Police Bula Legi, even that was not a concern. Then in fact, it became a cool thing. Ki, Arey, Auntie Police Bula Legi, to, kya ho gaya? So even songs, I feel, with the evolution of lyrics, with the kind of lyrics we have these days, which are constantly promoting alcohol or, getting into trouble is being glorified now. It's like cool to get into trouble. Barats go on for hours and hours. It's almost insulting, I feel, to the girl's family, but it's become such a cool thing now. Like, how can you be on time? So I think these are things that have slowly, it has played on our minds and it has affected how we do things.
You mentioned how the culture of the wedding itself, or the culture of the wedding parties and celebrations itself, is then in turn also determining popular culture, on a general basis. And the role that media is playing there, for a minute we are saying, let's say, cinema, but
Hmm.
also if you see the absolute glorification of the big Indian wedding.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, what started out as a ceremony, right? It was a religious ceremony, because depending on which faith you believed in, you had certain ways to get married, and what probably started out as something with just family and the local priest, and then added on some more friends to probably be witnesses and
Yeah.
solemnize the wedding, has grown into this big, fat, massive tamasha.
Yeah.
And
Then. Yeah.
the fact that today we have television shows, newspapers, where you have sections dedicated to weddings. There are magazines only on weddings. Do
Yeah.
you think that is propagating the culture further and putting pressure on people to simply live up to what the media is expecting them to do?
Of course. I mean, you have shows like Band Baja Bride on NDTV Good Times. You have so many. I mean, there's so many shows. There are magazines. There are, all these articles. You have these days, we have, fashion icons who kind of dictate what we even wear for these weddings. Even as a guest today, oh my God, I'm booking professional makeup because, you don't want to look like the odd one out who's just, looking so average. And everyone looks like goddesses and gods. And people put a lot of thought into even brides these days. I mean, I know poor grooms who are dragged to each and every fashion show, all your bridal couture collections. And I mean, it's a whole new ball game commercially. I mean, love actually, I feel, is a marketing concept. The love industry makes millions and millions of dollars every year because of all these things. And even like, say, Karwa Chauth now, because it was yesterday, oh my God, it was all over social media. It's meant to actually be a very private thing that a wife does for her husband. But these days, again, you could be sitting in your bedroom, and from your bedroom you have access to millions of lives and pictures and videos. And it does kind of dictate, like today, for example, I can go on Google and I can see how the biggest of the biggest person got married, even not knowing them, via Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. So we have all these things at the click of a button. We have access to all this private information. And of course it influences us. Like when my sister got married 2 years ago, I was actually checking out online. Wait, how did, for the decor, who did what kind of stage, what lighting, and then you want to kind of feel, oh wow, okay, I want to do that, or I want to do better than that. So I think that, again, social media also plays a huge role. Private moments have to be displayed these days instantly. The minute you're doing something, you feel this need to show it to the whole world. How can somebody miss what I did? I spent so much money. People should see it. That's another thing which, 10 years ago we didn't have that, or 20 years ago we didn't have that. So there was no that constant pressure. And I feel also these days, I think more about just getting two people married. Parents have a lot of pressure, societal pressure, and they feel that, they have to portray themselves in a certain way and their kids in a certain way. And so lists are made and wedding planners are, brought in. And it's almost like, it's not even like a wedding, it's like this big budget film that's being made, and crores are riding on it. Only difference is, films, you might get a return if your movie's a hit. Here, nothing. It's like all money gone. You don't get anything back. If you're lucky, your children will live happily ever after. That's the only prize, which also doesn't happen much anymore. So it's
You know,
funny.
so very interestingly, you say that there's no return on this big fat, let's say, wedding tamasha. Maybe the return is the media coverage. Maybe the return is all the Facebook likes and the views, and, like you mentioned, Instagram posts and all of that. But
Yeah.
what do you think made this transition for people to suddenly be broadcasting everything, right? I mean, what is the reason that one would want to take this additional stress of being photographed and videoed live and being broadcasted to the world saying I'm getting married. I mean, as if the stress of planning it wasn't enough.
I think honestly, it's because you can. And now that people have started, and I think also secretly, like everyone, see, it's not possible for everyone to become a big superstar and for everyone to be this person who is like, in vogue and a diva. And I think your wedding time is one time where you are the most important person in your wedding. And I think it's this need to literally, to display yourself as the most beautiful thing, as the most important thing. You're the celebrity, right, at your wedding. So I think it's that need in everyone to live through those moments where, you're given this crazy kind of importance, which you don't get normally in your everyday life, and you don't look that beautiful every day. And I think that need now, and now because of platforms like, we have our social media, Instagram, Facebook, etc. We have these platforms that have made it so easy for people to do this. And I think that's the only reason, because you can, so you do it.
In your book, you've written at length about some of these sort of, if I can call them characters, and practices they engage in with respect to weddings. Give us a little bit of an insight into what are some of these practices, what are these characters all about?
So, well, of course, we have our traditional practices which still exist, at least, superficially. So, of course, you have your certain ceremonies, like you'll have your certain pujas and your main functions like your mehendi and your sangeet and your wedding and your whatever, haldi and all that. But what I have basically shown is the whole evolution even of these functions, that on the surface of it, yes, it's happening. But what these ceremonies have now become, that everything ends with a party, which was not the case earlier. That sanctity, I feel. People don't even know anymore, why, what is being done, or like, wait, why are we doing this? Why do you have to put tikka on this head, or why? So that is what I was trying to show, that now it's like we just go on autopilot, and it's almost like the actual function, which is the point of the whole thing, is treated as something you need to get over to get to the party. So even like, for example, one big thing, which I find very amusing actually, is the barat, for example, because if you think about it, originally, what was a barat? It was nothing. It was not meant to be like an event in itself. It was the groom and his family basically showing their excitement to go and get the bride back home, and to show that, okay, they go band baje ke saath, and it was like a half 20-minute, 30-minute thing. It was not a, and now the wedding is actually the obstacle that comes in the way of the barat. Because, now we have mobile bars and mobile bathrooms following us, and we have a DJ following us in a truck. And I mean, it's like a festival. It's like you get Tomorrowland onto a roadside, and that is our barat today. And it goes on for 4 hours, where the, groom side refuses. And it's almost like a tug of war, You start getting messages from the bride's family saying, Mahurat nikla ja raha hai. And I've actually even mentioned in my book that these days, it's actually a shubh to reach on Mahurat because nobody reaches on time, minimum 2-hour wait for the bride's family. And I've seen this at multiple weddings myself. Luckily, I've been on the other side. So I've been dancing in the barat. But when you actually think about it, when you're sober and you're like, that's not normal. How did we get here? And how has it suddenly become cool to break all the traditions? And, you want to have your puja and you want to take the Saat Feras, but you don't have enough respect for the sanctity of being on time for the Mahurat. It's okay to reach your mandap drunk. That's fine. But, when the Pandit is talking, you have to be alert. So I just don't know. I find a lot of contradiction in these methods and what we do these days.
So tell me, was there a sense of irritation or frustration with all of this that got you to pen this first book around, weddings in India?
Not frustration, I would say, because luckily I was not the one getting married. If I was, I would be really pissed off if my husband made me wait for 2 hours, my groom. It was more like, I was like, wow, like, how has this happened? Even when you go for a regular party today, for example, when I was growing up and my parents would, go for parties, they would be home at like 1 a.m. and that would be considered a late night. And, that the whole drinking culture, everything has changed. How we live our lives have changed. And now you don't go for a party before 11 p.m. So there's no question of being back home before like 3 or 4 a.m. So I think it all this over the years I've been noticing that, wow, things have really changed since I was growing up. And now even my 4-5-year-old niece and nephew, they know how to work the iPad better than me. The songs they sing, I mean, it's horrifying. They're singing Sheila Ki Jawani and Char Botal Vodka and all. Little kids are growing up to this. So the message that we, like, for example, when I was growing up, a Hindi movie heroine was forbidden to drink alcohol. They would all be like, oh, sharab buri cheez hai. These days you have 4-5-year-old kids singing Auntie Police Bula Legi, and so I think that whole shift in culture has obviously impacted now weddings. I see little kids at weddings now who are acting drunk because they are imitating the adults. When we imitated the adults in our life, it was like boring stuff. Now when you're imitating your parents, either you're wasted or I know little girls who imitate their mothers. मैं इतना बड़ा set पहन के जाऊंगी, and उसका set तो बस 7 layers थे, मेरे तो 14 है. So this is now what kids are growing up seeing, this materialism and this hedonism, and I mean so I just thought it was really interesting actually, and I thought that it's just something that did before by anyone, at least in this manner. So I thought it'd be an interesting read.
Right. And is there like a underlying current or a message that you hope that the reader of your books take back home?
I think other than being entertained, yes, there is a message. I feel like in each chapter, there is a very subtle message, which, I mean, if you think about it, everyone, actually a lot of response I got was that, oh my God, when you put it down on paper like that, because normally we don't sit down and actually think about what we're doing. It's like everyone's on autopilot, and they're like, chapter after chapter, when we read this stuff put down on paper, you feel, oh my God, are we really like this? So that was a lot of people who responded, who are in this circle, who I'm talking about, who luckily didn't take offense. They all took it in a good spirit, and they laughed, and they said, oh my God, this really does happen. And oh my God, do we sound like this? Is this what we look like? And I was like, yeah, and so I think the message has been taken very well, that yes, we all overindulge. Too much money is spent on these things, more than is justified. And the question being, are these couples even happy? Because 50% of the weddings I've attended, the couples are divorced now. So, you know what I mean? So it makes you think that, we did all that, and for what?
Speaking of, outcomes of weddings, I mean, one can never obviously tell whether the couple is going to be sort of happily married or, remain married. But clearly you have tried to sort of document that entire process, pre-wedding. So you've spoken about how even the way people propose to each other has become so commercialized and, grandiose today. And then, of course, till the wedding and even post-wedding. Do you see that a certain part of it also has to do with our own hunger, each one's own hunger to be accepted as somebody who's, doing a good wedding, so parents want to be accepted amongst their, circles to say, yes, we indeed love our kids, and which is why we are spending and doing all of this stuff on a wedding.
Yeah, but it's only recent that love has kind of translated into how much you spend at a wedding, and also I feel, see, there's a couple of reasons here. I won't put it all on media. Firstly, I guess, these days people do have more disposable incomes, larger disposable incomes. People have, I guess, more undeclared wealth. You have a lot more access to the kind of cash, which I guess one did not have previously. So I think one is that. One is also, again, exposure. Like I said, these days we're constantly flashed with these images of, even like fashion icons, for example. If you see people's attires these days, we're not looking for clothes anymore. We're looking for looks. And, everyone wants to look a certain way and play a certain part. And, people go outfit shopping for funerals. I mean, can you imagine? So people, like, they even want that perfect white salwar kameez that in case I need to go for a chautha. So I feel everything has now become so kind of commercialized, and we are constantly flashed with these perfect images of perfect people having these perfect weddings. And it puts a lot of pressure even on your common man, who, of course, will not be able to have a wedding like the ones I'm talking about. But even the common man will go out of his means, will take a loan, will beg, borrow, steal, sell his kidney if he has to. But he will also go out of his means and have a wedding 10 times more than what he can afford. And I think that is the impact that the media has had, which is filtered through even to the general janta.
Right, right. And clearly, one can see that play out. I mean, if one was to take this a little further, why just weddings, but the celebration of a birth of a child, or even the announcement that you're expecting a child, or some of the more personal ceremonies that we do, post weddings, or even for your children, homecoming, etc., etc. Do you find even those have become overly glamorized, commercialized?
Totally. I mean, baby showers, you have pictures all over Instagram, every detail. I mean, I'm not complaining, because there are a lot of times I miss baby showers of my friends who don't live in my city. So that way it's great, because then I feel, okay, I was there because I in detail. But then there are also hundreds of other people seeing these pictures, I feel, who don't need to. So of course, whether it's a Karwa Chauth, whether it's a baby shower, bridal shower, Godh Bharai, whatever everything is out there now for the world to see.
So at this point in time, we'll take in maybe one or two questions from people who are watching online and they are tweeting.
Sure.
It's going to show up on your screen and then you can respond to it. So this first question says, where do you see the trend taking us? Do you think the bubble is stretched for personal gains?
Okay, firstly, to answer the first part of the question, where do you think this trend is taking us? Two things, I think, according to me. One is that we just keep going more and more over the top with each, wedding, and then up to a point where it just collapses. Because to be honest, there is only that much you can do. There is only that much money can buy. And, but very honestly now, after seeing it all and being it through all, I honestly don't enjoy these over the top weddings anymore. Now I like affairs that are private, classily done. You can still spend as much. I mean, if money bothers you and you want to get rid of it fast, you can still spend that kind of money, but have a small affair, have a classy affair, let people remember, each moment. Make the bride and the groom the stars of the wedding, not a Jennifer Lopez or a Deepika Padukone or whoever, will come and perform. So I think where the trend is taking us is to the point where it just becomes so much that people will stop enjoying it because they would have seen it all, done it all. And as far as, sorry, what was the second part of the question about we're in a bubble?
It says, do you think the bubble is stretched for personal gains?
Yes, totally. Because ultimately, people want to be viewed in a certain way. And you're mistaken if you think people do it for their kids. They do it for themselves. Because, they want to portray like a certain image in society. And, ki acha, usne Sukhbir ko bulaya, to I will call Salim Suleiman. Because people have this, need to be better than the last person who had a wedding. So yes, it is for personal gain.
So, space tourism is now almost a reality. And do you predict that at some point in time we'll see this massive proposal where, somebody takes someone to the moon, literally?
I'm not going to be surprised. In fact, I'll be very surprised if, say, in the next 5 years, somebody will figure it out. There will be some event company who will be doing these moon and back proposal packages. There are already companies who take shitloads of money and they plan your proposal and every detail. In fact, I'm not going to say which one and I don't want to offend my friends, but there's one of the proposals in my book, which was actually planned via this proposal, whatever, I don't know what they call themselves, but it was obviously an event company that plans detailed exotic proposals in exotic locations. So it's already happening. So just a matter of time when the moon will be an option.
So, you make it sound very interesting in your book as well. So given the times we are living in, so clearly there is, you could be in a way outsourcing your, mate hunting to an app, right?
Exactly.
So you've got an app which is outsourcing that part for you. You outsource some of the communication to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and then when you want to pop the question, you've got a event company, as you mentioned, whom you can outsource that entire thing to.
Exactly. All you need to do is outsource having a kid also to someone, and then you're just sorted. You get a wiki donor, and then that's it. Then you don't need to do anything. And you get somebody to take your favors also for you. So you don't need to use your brain at all. Karan Johar and Sanjay Leela Bansali have it all covered. The love. But love is actually a marketing concept. So I think these people have marketed this concept very well, and look at how much money is being earned.
Right. Well, clearly you've done a lot of research, and in terms of your own experiences, which you've dipped into, and like you mentioned, some of them you have not named, but clearly described very well in your book about proposals and weddings, and in your own way, you tried to sort of enlighten people as to the excessive nature of some of these celebrations. And good luck, Sakshi, to your writing and to this book. I'm sure in your own style, you are probably contributing to people opening their eyes and saying, where are we going with all this? I remember you had also mentioned that you are working on your second book.
Yes, I am.
Okay, and is that on a similar genre?
No, this has got nothing to do with weddings as such. This is going to be fiction. This is a proper fiction stories with characters and everything. But again, talking about some really valid real life issues. This is the next national obsession. I won't give away too much because I want it to be a surprise. But it's about girls who are turning 30 and are still unmarried. And oh my God, that's such a problem in India. So now I'm trying to fight with that concept.
Very interesting. And clearly, Sakshi, you're one of the different breed of authors who are promoting some of these views and asking some of these questions. Of course, in your own style, with a lot of entertainment and fun thrown into the book. So congratulations and wish you all the success.
Thank you, Kumar.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.